if you have a strategist, there is a high possibility that he or she may be doing some sort of a service design work.
Were there particular frameworks or structures which sort of enabled you as a service designer to sell the value of the practice?
This is a question that we've been pondering over. Can anyone become a service designer? Guys, I'm Junaiza Niazi, author of Navigating Service Design, and joining me is the incredible Sharan Longani, an aspiring service designer. Together, we're on a mission to connect you with the brightest minds practicing service design. In today's musing, we have Arun Joseph Martin. I'm going to open the floor for Arun to tell us more about himself and the amazing things that he's been doing for the service design community.
Janessa, before I start my introduction, just wanted to say a quick thanks for inviting me and also taking the time and the effort to write this wonderful book, Navigating Service Design. And as I completed my service design work last year, and I was just reading the book over the holidays, I realized that I would say I was aware of a lot of mistakes that I committed in my initial service design projects. And your book is a very good reminder that it's good for a service designer to read the book before starting a service design project. So with that, I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Arun Joseph Martin, a service designer based in Toronto. I was working with IBM in their mainframe business organization, and I was the first service designer there. So we had a global team of almost 150 designers located globally, and being the first service designer, I led 3 service design pilot projects with 3 teams, helping the teams create new digital touch points. The outcome of the pilot projects was that these touch points would help the clients more quickly in the journey of discovering and learning and trying out new product features, leading to faster product onboarding. Outside of my day work, I co-organize the online service design book club. So thank you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. And it's very interesting how you've been doing so much for the community on the side along with your work and your own explorations. So there was a bit on the part where you said that you have been speaking a lot to seasoned service designers. And so can you share one of those aha moments that stuck with you throughout that journey?
Sure. Right. So if you're a service designer in a large organization, there are teams who may have done similar transformational projects in the past. And those teams may have some relationships with the change management teams.
Yeah.
So these change management teams know how to help projects move from point A to point B. So as service designers, can we reach out to those change management teams, enlist their support for getting the buy-in for service design? And I did share my point of view with few service designers, and they said, yeah, that's a great idea, because by building partnerships and advocacy with other teams outside of the design bubble, we are also kind of sharing the value of the work, and we are also kind of building a small amazing army of advocates who can help us cross different organizational layers. So I think the key message was, even if you're a team of one, just reach out to anyone who does a change management role or initiative in an organization, and ask if they could be your mentor or your advocate.
Do they really listen to service designers, like change management teams and roles? Are they open to having a service designer collaborating with them? They have a structure that they're already very comfortable with, and they work in a specific way. How do we add value to that, and why would they include a service designer into their team?
Great question. So when we reach out to change management professionals, what we are going there, or what we're going to ask them is, hey, I'm doing this small project that is generating this business outcomes ABC. and then there's a small change component involved in the project. So with your expertise in change management, would you be willing to share your knowledge in terms of how can you help me? So you start with a small ask, and then they would be happy to share their experience, and then you slowly build relationships with them, and then just make sure that they are being appreciated for whatever role or assistance they have helped you in the service design project. And then you can be a little more curious and saying, hey, I'm curious, can you tell me more about your role, and are there any opportunities for me to work on some small side change management projects where you slowly build your skills. So in that way, you're also building, you're demonstrating curiosity and empathy for them as well. So start small, invite them to your service design project, and once they see the value, you can ask them, hey, can you teach me some skills in the change management practice?
Okay, I'm going to ask you a very tough question. Why are service designers always on the side of the table where we're trying really hard to get into different teams, or trying really hard to get other teams to involve us? Like, why do we always find ourselves in those shoes? How do we get ourselves in a space where they say, hey, we need service designers for this, or this is a problem that service designers can solve? Like, why are we always finding ourselves in trying to get into teams, get into projects, pitching our way through this?
Yeah, so I would say the reason is maybe we are trying to advocate for a seat at the strategic table without demonstrating value. I think the reason where service designers struggle to get a seat at the table is sometimes we fail to show value at a lower level which resonates with other stakeholders. So let's say there's a digital service. Maybe if we start doing usability or user experience and show that, okay, the outcomes of those projects have increased revenue or decreased cost, then it becomes easier to say, okay, now we have improved experience in this small part of the customer journey, so can we now look at it on an end-to-end or a systemic way, and these are the potential business outcomes. So start small, show value, or leverage on other teams who are doing great work, ask them to be advocates, and hopefully it takes some time for you to have a seat at the table, but finally you will reach there.
True. Just adding to what you said, like from my experience as well, when you say value, it often as designers we think value is the customer experience value, but often when you're sitting at the table, what value that the teams want to hear is the business value. And sometimes we get caught up in pushing the customer experience value, and it gets a little difficult for us to be heard, versus when the vocabulary is in business terminologies or business value terminologies, it's a bit more the reception to the conversation is much higher. Is that the same experience for you, or it's been different?
I would say the word CX experience could be quite ambiguous to different teams, right? And for us, for service designers to provide value, we need to be specific, right? So just let me give you a scenario. So let's say I'm being invited to a strategic meeting, and there are key business decision makers. They're not really concerned about journey maps, service blueprints, systems, mapping artifacts.
True.
The key question is, okay, Arun was involved in this project. So because of his involvement, was he able to generate revenue through his work or reduce costs? And if you can show that numbers, that's all it matters. So then we could say, okay, this all this improves customer experience and everything. What I'm seeing is a lot of service designers go with this CX strategy and CX experience, and it's quite confusing because there are multiple teams involved in CX experience, and each team has got its own KPIs or OKRs, and they're very specific. So when a service designer goes into that strategic conversation, the key here is like, okay, what's that business data or the business metric that I can share which says, okay, I have helped to generate revenue or cut costs. That's it. And that information is very hard because you have to build relationships with product managers and other business strategists, because the financial information is not being shared with everyone. It's being shared on a need to know basis.
True, true.
In all the projects that you've taken up, have you always been able to show like a revenue growth or cost reduction?
For service design pilots, no. The reason being, they were just pilots. We were starting out. But during the pilot projects, I had conversations with the product managers where I asked them, like, okay, for this specific touch points, how is this touch point bringing value? And the product manager did give me some, I would say, a little vague numbers for various reasons. They didn't want, the product manager was little hesitant to share the actual data, but I was able to get some vague numbers during the research phase that, okay, in a given part of the customer journey, these are the 3 touch points that's bringing in little more of a business revenues compared to the other touch points. So even during the ideation phase of the pilot projects, I had a chat with the product manager saying, okay, should we kind of set an internal metric saying that we want to improve the revenue of this touch point from X dollars to $5? We had a conversation, but then for various reasons we couldn't take it forward.
Interesting. You mentioned a service design book club earlier.
Mhm.
So I wanted to understand if that was like a strategic move on your part to be able to have conversations with more service designers and understand and learn better.
Okay, so in 2018, when I was a design researcher with IBM Toronto, I was looking for opportunities to transition to service design. And at that time, there weren't any local service design meetups in Toronto. Service Design Canada had an annual conference, but outside of that, I didn't find a community over there. And being a book nerd, I wanted to kind of learn from service design authors. So I said, okay, why not start a small book club where I invite the author of a book to join us, and also have few interested service design practitioners or people who are interested in service design join us for 1 hour of chat, and then I can learn from the collective wisdom.
On that note, so on the book that I had written, there were some excerpts from which we wanted to anchor few of the conversations on. So one of the excerpts that Sharon and we picked was the excerpt read that if you are a designer trying to learn business, the key is to spend more time with stakeholders from other departments, very similarly to what you were suggesting. And the more time you spend learning about the contribution of non-design departments, the more you understand the working of the entire business and the product. So we wanted to understand from you a little bit more in depth, what level of business understanding is enough for someone starting out as a service designer?
Sure, a great question. So I would say a lot depends upon the service designer's academic background, the motivation to learn the business, and how much of that project needs business acumen, because a lot of factors are into play. I'm just going to offer just 2 simple ways. The first is having a chat with your product manager or anyone who interacts with the business side, and asking them, how is this product generating money or saving money, and which touch points are contributing to that. So you start with that approach, and once you have a fair understanding of how the business is doing how this product is doing from a business perspective, the next is maybe you can reach out to someone a little more senior in an organization, like a director of product management or a vice president, and then if you have enough trust and credibility, you can ask them, hey, I'm trying to see how my work can add more ROI, and I was wondering, would you be open to sharing a little more about the business model of this project or product? And they may share maybe specific components of the business model, saying that okay, this is our ecosystem, or maybe this is our channel partners, we are getting revenues from these channel partners. And you can probably take that information, customize it, and then use that as part of your journey to improve business acumen. And third, I would say, is take courses like D.MBA, or there are new courses on Maven learning platform, like the ROI of business design, and so on and so forth. So I think all these small strategies could help aspiring service designer grow the knowledge of business design.
So, can a designer say, hey, I don't understand numbers, I don't understand business, but I still want to be a service designer? Is that a possibility?
Definitely, yeah. And what the service designer could do is have a mentor who could speak to the business numbers and who can do the translation to the service design world. So maybe they can reach out to someone, maybe like a business strategist or someone who's done an MBA, and say, hey, I will teach you journey mapping and design thinking. You just teach me how to crunch the numbers and show me how those numbers align to my work outcomes. So it's a win-win relationship. And it would also help in your annual performance appraisal, saying that, okay, you've done these projects and these were the measurable outcomes for the organization.
Right. Right. So, in the current employment trends in India, not many designers have had that opportunity to work with business problems. And nor do we often see business professionals collaborate or discuss with designers. So, according to you, what can aspiring service designers do to get an opportunity to collaborate with business professionals?
Sure. I mean, so I would say there are three steps. So let's say you would like to know about service design, and you have a couple of business strategists and business designers on your team. Now, anyone who's on the business side of things, they are always super busy. So even to get a 30-minute chat on their calendar invites, it's very tough. So I would say start with the mentoring platforms like ADP List. Look for business designers or business strategists. Try to get a sense of like, what does a day look like, their projects, their skill sets. And then with that, you have a fair understanding of, okay, this is what a business designer does, right? And then the second step is you go back, synthesize those conversations, and then you reach out to a business designer or a strategist, and you create a one-pager saying that, who are you, why does your work matter to the company, and why do you want to meet them? And I'm sure once you have that one pager and you send it to them, and you can ask them for a coffee chat, I think most people would say yes, because they may have only very limited understanding of a service designer's role. So now here you are doing a little bit of that selling or advocacy, saying that, okay, who am I and what is the value I'm bringing to the table? And once they have that coffee chat, once you have that coffee chat with the business designer, you ask your questions. The next step is you can say, hey, can I shadow you every quarter or every 6 months to get a sense of like what you do? And once you get a fair understanding of what they do through job shadowing, I think it's a little more easier for everyone to collaborate a little more in a better way.
So, as a strategic move, can we say that for a service designer to build their portfolio faster, it's smarter for them to work with smaller startups, get their foot in the game so that they understand the different aspects of a business before they enroll into a larger organization? Because I feel like in MNCs or big companies, it takes you more time to build those skill sets and abilities, versus in a startup it's much faster, your exposure is much higher, so you can build your portfolio much faster. Is that something that we can say?
I would say it depends, because it depends upon the interest of the service designer. Because as a service designer, I wouldn't want to really work in a startup, because I am more interested in the backstage side of things. So I need time to think through, do the mapping, planning, and then make that small change management steps. Whereas in a startup, the pace is a little more faster. So as a service designer, I may be doing the craft. I may not have time to, or I may not even get an opportunity to improve the process, because in a startup there may be no processes at all, right? Right? Or in a consulting background, usually most consultants, service design consultants, after the completion of their ideation phase or the future state, they just ship out a report, right? They're not really, they don't have the time to work on the backstage. So for me, working in a startup or a consultancy is ruled out, because that's what I want to do. I want to work in large organizations. But as you said, for someone who really wants to kind of look at or earn experience working across different organizations, I would say start at a startup, maybe join a mid-sized organization so that they can see the difference, and then they decide, oh, is a large organization a better fit for me, or should I just still go back to mid-level or startup. The key difference that I'll have to just stress it out is, working in a startup and a mid-level organization, you get a little more freedom and autonomy for implementation, whereas in a large organization you have to be at a little more senior in the organization to get things done.
We were reading your article where you beautifully articulated your transition and your journey from a UX research to a service design role. And there was some very interesting that you mentioned that the insights from the customer journey touch points were added to the backlog when you were working with a team. And the key reason for your transition from being a UX researcher to a service designer is where you felt that you can bring that to the forefront and give it more higher priority. So today, as a service designer, have you been able to achieve that that specific reason why you switched that role and switched that lens? So have you been able to push through this and get the customer insights in the forefront?
Sure. I mean, the short answer is yes, the title did matter for me, because as a design researcher, I was aware of the customer pain points just across only a few stages of the customer journey. I was not exposed to the entire end-to-end experience, because the scope of my project was small. Maybe my project focus would have been just to improve the trial experience, or maybe the user experience of the current features. So the scope was very small. When I transitioned to a service design role, the one good thing that I spent upfront was talking to the teams, trying to explain the difference between UX and service design, right? So the first question I got asked was like, okay, what is that visible, tangible artifact that I'm creating? Because they thought that service design is also like UX. So by clearly explaining to them that, service design projects are mini transformational projects, you're not going to get any immediate outcomes, in the next 1 week or 2 weeks. But if you wait for 6 months or 1 year, it's going to benefit the entire team. So I used to kind of have that upfront conversations with the design lead. And then during the research phase, the team members really opened up in terms of their pain points. So I was able to kind of bring all the team members together and shine a torchlight or a flashlight on all the problems, and that really helped me to kind of see the pain points across end-to-end projects. And that was because of my title, because as a service designer, I was introduced to the organization as someone who would be working on end-to-end experience.
So when you were having these conversations, were there particular frameworks or structures which sort of enabled you as a service designer to sell the value of the practice?
Sure, yeah. So I used one change management framework from Prosky, I think. It's known as the ADKAR framework. So ADKAR. A stands for awareness, D stands for desire, K stands for knowledge, A stands for ability, and R stands for reinforcement. Right. So with respect to my pilot projects, the awareness phase was more about helping them understand that, okay, this is a business problem the pilot project is solving, right? And D, that is a desire, is like making them excited to participate in the pilot project. K, the knowledge stands for sharing my knowledge of service design for the pilot project. And then the ability is helping the team grow their service design skills. And then reinforcement, R, stands for how can the team apply their service design skills to other projects they are working on. So I took them through this framework. I never told the teams explicitly that I'm sharing this framework, I'm following this framework, but in my mind I had that and I was following it to a T.
That's very insightful. Were there any challenges when you were trying to? I want to understand, from at the transition phase when you're trying to sell the value. Did you feel like it was very difficult to do that, or was the organization mature enough to absorb that? And if it was difficult, what were those challenges and how did you overcome them?
Sure, a great question. So I would say when I started out my transition, and when I started out as a service designer after my transition to design research, the core skills I had was only research and facilitation, right? And I was, the first few months I was just doing research and looking at research analyze insights. We were trying to see, okay, we had a business problem, we were trying to get some insights around that. And then I decided that, okay, let's do some pilot projects, right? And initially when I started thinking about the pilot project, I thought, okay, I'll just speak to design lead, explain to them what this project is, and they'll be on board. Then after that initial conversation with the design lead said, okay, Arun, your proposal looks interesting, but would you be open to creating a buy-in deck for the entire cross-functional team so they can understand the value of the pilot? And I was very nervous and anxious because I had never created a buy-in deck for service design to sell the value to a cross-functional team. So I think the key thing to be kept in mind was, I had just transitioned to service design 6 months before, so I was still learning service design. And here the design lead is saying that, okay, I need to sell the value of service design to a cross-functional team who've been more accustomed to the user experience side of things. And that's where I struggled a little bit in that initial conversations, because the stakeholders or the cross-functional teams, they were looking for a similar service design case study from the same technology domain.
Interesting. So from where you're at right now as a service designer, what does the corporate ladder look like for you here on? And would you stick to the label, or are there other career paths that you would consider branching out into?
Sure. So I'm not a big fan of labels. So, I am always looking to improve my skills to solve complex business problems. And in a corporate setting, you have a service designer, you could have a mid-level service designer, senior service designer, service design. But what I've realized is that all those titles sometimes could be misleading. You could have someone with the title of a senior service designer, but they could be just doing a UX lead work, right? And in a corporate organization, they have this strict checklists, right? If you do activities A, B, C, D consistently, then you are actually ready to move to the next level. Now, as a service designer, it is just, we think in a holistic way. We don't constrain ourselves to doing small parts of the project, right? So for me, I prefer to join an organization where they say, okay, here is this a little bit of that complex problem, and let's put our skills of systems thinking to solve that. That being said, I also wanted to share one example. So in December, I attended an interview at a financial organization for the role of a service designer. And so this was just before my visit to India. So I went, and during the interview, it was very interesting that this hiring manager was saying that, okay, Arun, we already have a strategist who solved a lot of problems, and then you as a service designer would do research with the strategist. And I was really confused, because in my mind, a service designer is a person who solves a little more complicated problems. And here there's a strategist who has the title of a strategist but is doing service design work. And the job posting is actually for a service designer, but the responsibilities are that of a UX researcher. And that gave me an insight that whenever whoever is applying for a service design role, if you have a strategist, there is a high possibility that he or she may be doing some sort of service design work. So if you are joining as a service designer, you have to be very clear or upfront in terms of like, what is that overlap of service design skills that you're doing, and what is that unique value you bring to the table. Because what I'm seeing in the market is you have few service design roles, but they are all actually UX research roles. So I would encourage all aspiring service designers to kind of ask this important question when they go for interviews, is that if there is an strategist, or if there's a UX researcher, or if there's a designer, what are my unique skills that I bring to the table, and what are the skills that overlap with the other members of the team? Because if you don't clarify that upfront, there's a possibility that there could be change in dynamics in terms of internal collaborations, like, okay, how come this new person is stepping on my shoes?
Right. That's just been my observation from the last few years that I've been speaking with strategy teams and working with them. It's not that they don't want to work with us, but we're not the first person they think about when they're trying to solve these problems. They don't think, oh, we should talk to the design team and see if a service designer can help us in this. And another learning I've had working with strategy teams is that most of these teams come up with strategies or probable ways to solve a problem. They are not a part of the implementation. They only suggest. They play a very consultant role. They suggest and then they pull out. Has that been your experience as well? So as service designers, when I work with strategists, I take over the implementation bit. So it's usually I'll work with the strategy team to some extent until the structure is we both are aligned, why we're doing what we're doing. I'm representing the consumer and the ground viewpoints. The strategist is representing the business viewpoints and the business needs and business metric. And once we align or converge into the new process or service or system that we want to build, then the implementation front of it for the prototyping is something that is picked up by the service designer, and then once it moves towards pilot, it's either passed over to a product manager or a program manager or whoever that is. So that's been the structure that has worked out for me. I don't know if that's been a similar experience for you.
It's a great question. I would say service designers are the bridge between strategy and the operational teams. And so you're totally right. When most service designers, they always like to be in the blue sky strategy side of things to come up with new ideas and define the direction, because operation details is like getting into the weeds, and there's a lot of bureaucracy back and forth and all that, right?
Interesting. So having worked in quite a few countries, what are your thoughts on the level of service design advancement in all of these? And in your opinion, which are the regions which are very hot on service design?
Sure. I would say the two industries, I would say three industries are a little more welcoming of service design: retail, finance, and healthcare. In terms of markets, I would say in Canada, we have service design teams in financial institutions, provincial and federal governments, and a lot of service design consultancies. In the US, yes, there is a strong appetite for senior service design roles and senior service designers and service design roles. I've also seen a lot of postings for remote service designers in the US. In the UK, there is I think an ever-increasing demand of service designers both in the private and the public sector. In Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, I'm slowly seeing an uptick of service design roles in large organizations, and also in Australia there is a small uptick of service design roles in, I would say, primarily in the financial institutions. So I would say, if I were to really look at it from a region perspective, Europe, specific countries in Europe and in US would be my top two regions where service design is currently growing.
So, this is a question that we've been pondering over. Can anyone become a service designer?
Okay, I would say, you know, I mean, I'm a little hesitant to use the word service designer here, or the title service designer. I would say anyone who has an aptitude for solving complex problems would be a potential service designer, right? Their ability to visualize the ecosystem of stakeholders and their partners, and then show the gaps in experience, and then help align the teams and show them a future state. That, I think, is a key trait. The second is, are they able to look at problems from a systemic level, right? And third, are they able to solve problems that make an immediate impact to the business model? And of course, if they're very good in project management and storytelling and visualization skills, so these are all, I would say, the key skills of a person who would like to be a service designer. So that being said, titles do not matter, because for me, if the person has all this criteria, this person is a service designer, or it could be any other title. So the short answer, anyone who has those criteria, I think they can become, and they should become.
Is service design, is it a career or is it a skill? Like, having this label of a service designer, is it just a skill set that anybody should be picking up so that you can address the issues that a service designer could typically address? Is that more of a skill set, or is it a career?
I mean, I'm going to take a hybrid approach and say it's going to be a mindset approach. The reason being, you can apply service design not only to your day job, you can apply it to your professional life or even to your personal life. So I think it's a must-have mindset, and of course there are skills and tools to help you grow in that specific phase, right? I think the key is just everyone should improve their knowledge of systems thinking. If everyone can improve their knowledge of systems thinking, I think they're already on their way to becoming a good service designer, because systems thinking is very messy.
So thank you so much for sharing a lot of snippets of your journey through this video. And anyone who wants to know more about Arun, you should read his Medium articles. He's very well articulate, and he has a beautiful way of storytelling his entire journey. So thank you so much, Arun, for sharing your experiences with us.